welcome to the Refined Peasants. For today, we're tackling the infamous gun control.
We've got really good timing. What with the Supreme Court's issue coming down, and then we just got the first gun legislation passed of my life. Well,
biggest gun legislation passed in decades is what they're calling it.
Well, of course they call it that, but the 90s had an assault weapons ban.
That's a few decades ago.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like 30 years ago, does it?
Yeah.
God bless.
I think it's the first, really, anything to do with guns in a while.
So I guess let's do what we always do. Let's get opinions on gun control. Garrett?
I guess I don't know what they're trying to... I think people owning AR-15s with attachments is fine. I'm pretty strongly a Second Amendment advocate. I really think the purpose of guns is not only to defend yourself, your property, but it's also to defend you from tyranny. And, the argument against that, I'm just going to beat y'all to it, is that, the government has nukes. And it's like, but a bunch of...
They don't have nukes, they have tanks.
So we had tanks in Afghanistan, too, and that population armed with AK-47s held us at bay for...
Well, because the AK is better.
You shut your blasphemous mouth. Anyway, I'm a big advocate for the Second Amendment. I don't agree with outlawing quote-unquote assault weapons, mean-looking rifles. I don't think that's good policy.
So we'll get into that, though. Assault rifle is a term, by the way.
Well, it's a term that means, fully automatic.
Yeah, it's a German word. It's from Stongewehr. And the primary function, the gun has to have automatic, which... A military rifle is an assault rifle, but a civilian...
Automatic is illegal, correct?
No, so it is legal, but you pay a large amount to have the class license.
I think it's every 5 years, or every so often you have to
and you go on a list.
Yeah, you go on a list. So what is your opinion on gun control?
It's kind of very similar to, I would probably say, driver's licenses. I don't think everyone should be driving, and I think that there is some stuff you could do that they can revoke your driver's license.
So I probably agree with that.
Yeah, so not everyone should have a gun.
Yeah, that's for certain.
Yeah.
There are clearly, as evidenced by a lot of... No, what's the...
Dead people.
Yeah, there you go.
Dead people.
Just unalived folks. Not to make light of it, but it is just most of the time these shooters are mentally ill, and at least in some way, shape, or form. Like the Uvalde shooter, which inspired the gun legislation to get passed through Congress.
Yeah,
that kid. They've been over. The FBI found out a whole bunch of literal red flags that should have prevented this kid from getting a firearm, and they didn't.
The problem is Texas, no offense, has really loose background checks.
The background checks are federally required. And he went through a background check. There was nothing in his past that would fail a background check.
It's the red flag laws that they really don't pick up on. Which the new bill actually basically do away with that.
What do you mean?
No, it just gives states funding.
To do red flag laws, right?
Yeah.
Right.
That was my understanding of it.
They do more.
The state can tell you to piss off.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and so just in case you guys don't know, a red flag law is basically a law that lists certain criteria for which your firearms can be preemptively revoked. Mm-hmm. So, say your spouse accuses you of domestic violence. Under the red flag law, you could file a complaint and the police would come and take those firearms. Right. That's how it's intended to be used. Or, you see a teenager skinning cats. Mm-hmm. Okay, we need to make sure there's no access to firearms. With kids, it's a little... We can talk about the benefits and the pros and cons of red flag laws later, but... So I really want to get into the meat of the actual legislation. Or maybe we should start with the Supreme Court, because that happened first.
Okay, so the Supreme Court, if you guys don't know, New York versus, I can't remember the exact name, it's two dudes.
It's a very recent decision. It came down shortly after Roe v. Wade, which means it got virtually ignored.
So, New York made a law where you have to have a permit to carry outside your house. Very common. A lot of bluer states do it. Even some red states do carry laws. You have to have a permit to carry.
Right, there's only a few open carry states. I think Texas, Oklahoma, Florida.
There's a few constitutional carries.
Okay.
And so the thing what got them to the Supreme Court is New York did a probable cause as one of their things. They told two gentlemen who requested for the permits they did not have probable cause for the permits. And they took it to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court says that is so vaguely defined that it violates their Second Amendment and 14th Amendment rights. Second Amendment's kind of easy to understand,
Right. So, and you have to have a pretty, like, for me at least, you need to have a pretty good reason to deprive somebody of their Second Amendment right.
So I think you and Wyatt were confused. Like you said, it's kind of weird. They said the 14th Amendment. The more I looked into it, the 14th Amendment basically says you can't laws can't be you can't just pick and choose who the law applies to.
So it's like anti-discrimination.
Pretty much is that the laws have to be just equally distributed. You can't.
I think. See, but the law was written for what it's over 100 years old. A lot of these laws are over 100 years old. But basically what it did, the law just said, look, if you want to carry a gun in the state of New York...
outside the home.
You have to have a justified reason. You can't just carry a gun outside.
Yeah. And
it's a really old law, and like I said, something like...
Well, and it's not just a blue... If that is a really old law, I mean, that's not just a blue state thing. 100 years ago, we've all seen the movie Tombstone, right?
Yeah.
Like, you can't... No one's saying you can't carry a gun. You just can't carry a gun in town.
That's how, like, Chicago gets away with gun bans and stuff.
Yeah, see how well that works.
Yeah. But, so they shot it down. I think Clarence Thomas had the majority opinion, and then Alito had a concurring opinion. And
which that normally is the way it works, because Clarence is the senior Supreme Court justice at this point.
Yeah. The thing that got me is that, so Alito said that it's not, like, long rooted in the country, and it's over 100-something years old.
Yeah.
Like, I don't get it, but...
well, so I would argue that I'm not a legal mind, and I haven't read the opinions themselves. So I'm just going to take whatever you guys tell me about this decision as fact. I haven't deeply researched it, but I would say that open access to firearms is the deeply rooted tradition in America, as opposed to limiting those rights.
So I don't get is you see a lot of people say like any gun control is unconstitutional.
There are some people like that.
My issue with that is, so the Constitution clearly says you can own guns. It doesn't say what kind of guns you can own. And it doesn't tell, and that's left to the states, is it not?
So, the power to restrict firearms would theoretically be in an implied power of the states. The issue is we also have a lot of, I think it was Trevor Noah, it was some liberal night host who came out and said, back in the day, they had cannons, but you couldn't own cannons. They've always restricted firearms. And I'm like, and there's the famous letter from Thomas Jefferson. So it's a merchant ship who's like, hey, can I own cannons? And Thomas Jefferson says, well, fuck yeah, you can own cannons. It says right there.
It's like, can you afford a cannon?
The thing is, Jefferson didn't write the Constitution, though.
Right. But he was a founder. I mean, so I'm still reading through the Federalist Papers, but...
So I always say the Second Amendment says you're allowed to have a gun. It doesn't say states can't regulate what kind of guns you can own.
Okay. I guess we can just jump into the Second Amendment because this is going to open a can of worms if we're not careful. But how do you guys interpret the Second Amendment?
I think we've been over this before, if I recall. But so the way I interpret the Second Amendment is that any American citizen ought to be able to own firearms, have unrestricted access to pretty much any firearm they want. So obviously we've made exceptions for like explosive devices, which are not firearms. The language could include grenades and such. I think it's better that it doesn't. In reality, I don't think that those things are going to be super needed if we have to resist tyranny. Foreign or domestic. Yeah, I really don't. So, again, hang on. Again, Afghanistan held us off for 12 years.
They still use pipe bombs, and they use bombs.
Right, but, no one's outlawing stuff to make.
Well, it wasn't because they had guns they outlasted us. They were just It's just willpower.
Also, like the
They
terrain.
could have had no guns. I mean, they didn't kill very many Americans.
So, like Americans historically, if it's not on like good terrain, like if it's on mountains or jungles, we don't do very well. Like we did great.
I mean, so in recent history, but Europe is pretty mountainous and pretty heavily wooded.
Highways.
I mean, so that is true.
Like
That's
it's easy
true.
to get from Paris to Berlin. When there's
Oh,
a
who
highway.
was it?
I
It was
mean,
the general from World War II who said like it was his justification for building the road system.
Yes.
I just heard that from my Thomas Sowell book
But
too.
I told you that.
so I'm kind of like you can listen if you want to own.
And it was verified by
if you
Sowell.
if you want to
Because I know I heard it in the book.
a 50 BMG or a Barrett 50 cal, I don't care if you can afford it, go for it. But I understand why some states were like, hey, no.
So,
Like, if you want to say, like, to own a 50 cal, you have to do the same kind of registry you do to own a fully automatic. I'm fine with that.
the issue with the registry is a little bit different. But how do you interpret the Second Amendment? So mine is essentially free access to any kind of arms for every citizen.
I guess.
And obviously, throughout this podcast, I'm gonna talk that back with exceptions.
Yes,
But that's my founding. That's the base.
I think I'll expand more. I think you're allowed to own firearms of some sort, but I think states have the right to regulate whether it's they want to say you can only have a single shot 243 and a 12 gauge shotgun that's breakover. I mean, you still have the right to bear arms. It's just those arms are the only ones you're allowed to have.
So the extreme limiting. So like California's, you can only own a musket.
I believe,
and that's an exaggeration, but you believe that is constitutional? You think the state has the right to regulate those arms?
Well, if you go by how the Constitution laid out, it says you have the right to bear arms, but everything else is left to the state.
Well, again, so we also have to keep in mind, we're not going over things that establish precedent. We don't go over other Supreme Court cases. We don't go over... I'm not a legal mind.
Yeah, no.
I'm just giving you the way I interpret the Second Amendment. I don't know. Again, there's going to be a whole bunch of other cases, I'm sure, that the Supreme Court's ruled on that changes how they interpret the Second Amendment, and it's all a bunch of legalese.
And
to be perfectly honest with you,
so the Supreme Court said just because they ruled against New York, it was because they didn't clearly define what proper cause was. They said you can still do carry permits and require those to carry outside the home, but you must be clear defined. You can't do any vagueness.
That may have been in Alito's. That wasn't in Thomas's, though.
That was in the ruling.
I don't... So the majority ruling?
Mm-hmm. But I think Thomas was the majority opinion, and then Alito was the concurring.
Don't get me lying to you, but
Thomas has a pretty shocking quote in there. It's something like, "It doesn't even matter if gun laws are effective." To him, from a legal perspective, that makes no bearing. Because whether or not it's effective doesn't change the fact that it violates your right.
So that's true. That's true, though. I would agree with that. Like, so just because something's effective, well, so it would be. Hang on, because it would be theoretically effective if we took everyone with schizophrenia and locked them in a hospital and never let them go, right? That's theoretically effective.
Okay.
But it would violate their rights, correct?
Yeah. Okay.
So just because something is effective doesn't mean it is the correct course.
I'll say this.
I don't think so.
Your rights end where someone else's life begins. And we're seeing a lot of.
But that's the thing with the guns is that if we could prove without a shadow of a doubt that guns are the reason that all this death is happening, Thomas says that doesn't matter. It has no bearing.
Well, I mean, first off, you can't prove that. I mean, there are more defensive uses of firearms in the United States than there are violent.
He's saying it wouldn't even matter.
See, so,
I mean, again, if I could end, if I could theoretically end all theft by locking up, I don't know, by violating the rights of a specific group of people.
See, that
doesn't mean that...
I don't even know that this is necessarily even violating someone's rights. Like, honestly...
Yeah, the second
so his opinion is much like mine, except
it's like,
from what it sounds like.
That's like saying if we took away all nukes from private citizens, it's violating their rights. Like, I just don't... Like, I guess we're violating your right not to own a nuke, but otherwise, crazy people have nukes. We don't want
So, and I don't think anyone here is... I'm not gonna advocate that everyone have nukes. And Nick, you're absolutely right. I don't even think every country should have nukes, because I think some people are going to be very irresponsible. Yeah. So the thing with guns is, at least compared to hand grenades or RPGs or nuclear weapons, they're very short-ranged. Like, there's small casualty rates comparatively to those. Obviously, there have been mass shootings where hundreds end up injured or dead. But, like, if I throw 5 grenades into a concert, I'm going to hurt and kill a lot more people than I would with even a 30-round magazine. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
So,
but that wouldn't change the fact that it might still be a violation of the Second Amendment.
it might still be. Again, I am not aware of any precedent that would say, okay.
Well, I guess it's only a violation depending on how you look at the Second Amendment. So, like, I don't even.
Well, hang on, because Wyatt hasn't gotten to tell his.
It wasn't even viewed really as an individual right until like 2008. As well, Bush was president. They tried to pass some handgun law to outright ban handguns completely. And the Supreme Court shot it down because it violated their individual rights. It's one of the first Supreme Court cases about guns that quoted it as an individual's right to own firearms.
Okay.
So before then, we have 200 plus years of common law to be like, well, it's not really about your... even Kansas once upon a time had laws where you couldn't carry a firearm in town.
I have a question for you. How do y'all feel about people who say, like, the founding fathers, way back then, like, military had muskets, we had muskets. They had Henry lever action, we had lever actions. How do y'all feel about that? Like, some people say, whatever the military has, the citizens should have.
I think it's a total misunderstanding of the Second Amendment.
I don't...
I think it's a misunderstanding of the times.
Whether or not it's unconstitutional, I think... it is probably better that we don't allow individuals to own tanks. Again, because, I don't know, people who are going to be able to afford a tank or an Apache helicopter probably aren't going to do stupid stuff with it. That being said, they might.
So the problem I have is, like, the military back then was the people. Like, they didn't use military-issued rifles. They used home rifles. Like, you took your hunting rifle with you to the battle. If you died on the battlefield...
Well, specifically in the Revolution, you didn't have a standing army for a lot of the war,
Civil War, do we get the Henry rifle at the very late of it that we had military-issued surplus? So whatever rifle you had, the Texas Revolution, they were fighting with their own hunting rifles. That's why it's like, oh, the military had this, and I was like, no, the people had these hunting rifles.
So the military, the government wasn't even issuing the arms. It was people's private ownership of the arms.
There wasn't a military.
I think there was a standing military, at least in the North, before the Civil War.
After the Revolution, but even after then, it's like you brought your own.
After
1812,
we should have put together a standing army.
Well, so here's the thing. Once Thomas Jefferson gets elected, I think he got elected in the year 1800. He gets inaugurated in March of the following year, which would be 1801. He downsizes the entire government. Like, the entire government.
Yeah, he gets to the nut cutting.
Especially the military, because he thought that a standing army was so stupid, just from his reading of European history, especially during peacetime.
Yeah.
So according to his historical, it is there's some merit to it.
There's for sure. It's like Roman standing army.
The idea that, like, look, if you have a large army that has no enemy to fight, it will not take long for those generals to look at your own government and trying to overthrow the government. And install a military dictatorship. That was his reading of a lot of European history, which didn't happen.
Yeah, I mean, military coups happen all the time.
Right. But, so he went, and I think we had, it was probably like a little bit over 250,000 troops when he took over. He cuts that down to like 3,000.
Okay.
And then he starts a war with Britain because he supports the French. And he doesn't even take over.
Trade war, correct? Or are we talking...
No, he started the War of 1812. Madison just has to finish it. So by the time Madison gets in office, we don't have an army. And that's why they sailed right up to the fucking White House. It's because we had 3,000 troops in the entire fucking states.
Right.
So, and then from Madison on, we pretty much had a standing army. They don't get to really any size until probably the Civil War. So
conflict after Jefferson is pretty ongoing, though, because, you've got Indian nations off to the west of the Appalachia, then you've got the Mexican-American War, then you've got...
Yeah, it just kind of depends on what they were fighting.
Yeah, but, to Jefferson's point, if you have an army, it's like having a mean dog with nothing to be mean to. It's a matter of time before it turns on you, or it's going to find something to fight.
Right, and, yeah. So that was his understanding of why we shouldn't have a standing army. Madison he had to build one for wartime, we've just been pretty much at war, varying ever since.
Yeah.
But Jefferson kind of viewed it as an individual's right. James Madison did not. He viewed it more as a state's right to defend itself. So, like, if Britain were to come to war over here, Virginia would defend Virginia, Massachusetts would defend Massachusetts. It was kind of just...
Or you'd at least have the capability, because in the beginning of the Federalist, like the first 5 Federalist Papers is all about the federal government defending your state.
Yeah. Well, originally, in the Second Amendment, it didn't say state. It said nation.
They're synonyms.
I can't... No, it's a big difference, because there wasn't going to be a state militia originally. And then, I can't remember his name. Gosh dang it. Patrick Henry. He objected. He's from Virginia, I think. And he objected on the grounds, he says, so what happens, like, if a rebellion or something happens in Massachusetts, what's going to happen to the militia in Virginia? And, of course, they said, well, we would pull the people from Virginia to go help squash the rebellion. And Patrick Henry said, you can't do that, because our militia is our slave patrol. And if you take away our slave patrol, our slaves can get away and rebel and come back and fucking kill us. So...
As you do.
Yeah. As... Well, it won't be too long. We'll see a similar thing happen in Haiti, where they... I think the French owned them. And then the slaves revolted.
Yeah. Well, Haiti's slave to owner, whatever, population, plantation owner to slave... percentages?
To slave. Owner
Yes.
to slave.
Thank you.
Percentages.
Were just huge.
Yeah.
I mean, like, so there were like 5 white guys on all of Haiti.
Basically, so that started some arguing, and the whole South, like the Southern people, they were terrified of that happening to them. Like Haiti happens later. It happens in like the 1800s, I think. But they were horrified of the fact that slaves might overthrow them. So they said we can't. So they changed it to state, which doesn't really make a huge difference until you figure out that we don't have state militias really anymore. We have
National Guard.
No, we have...
so the National Guard functions.
But we weren't supposed to have a federal military for the most part. We were just supposed to have state militias handle everything. And then if we had to go to World War, we just kind of draft all those people up.
Yeah, so you would draft everyone from a state militia. So you wouldn't have a federal army. You would have a bunch of National Guards. And then when the Fed said, okay, we got to go to war with Britain, the National Guards get...
They turn into federal.
Now you've got federal generals instead of state generals.
So I guess let's get into... We want to talk about the legislation, what they passed, because I had it here.
I mean, so we pretty much covered how we view... Like, so, has anyone got problems with the Supreme Court's ruling here?
Me? Are you fucking kidding me?
I mean, so, okay, so what are your issues with it?
I mean, I don't think it's... I mean, number one, it's over 100 years, and this law was doing just fine. New York's a decent low gun crime state.
Apparently they weren't. I did see an article where they weren't turning down a whole bunch of requests.
It was over half. I mean, all you had to do... So, like, if you just said, like, look, I'm a repo man. I encounter a lot of crazy people.
Yeah.
I need to carry... They would be like, gotcha. And it's a judge. It's not like a bureaucrat.
Yeah.
Like, you know... Like,
they'd have to review the case.
You know...
I think the primary... if I remember right, the primary objection was... Or not from these people, but... It's the time. So it takes a lot of time to get your permit from them.
I mean, I guess,
but
so does the DMV.
Yeah, like the vast majority of people got the permit. Like the judge has to, like, you have to have...
Well, so Wyatt said 50% got rejected, right?
No, it was over 50% got accepted. I think it was like 60-something.
Okay, so let's call it 30% gets rejected.
So it's like, how many are just like, because I want to? And they don't have like a valet.
I mean, so I can say living in Oklahoma that a lot of people carry guns that just because they want to. But I think they want to because they feel like they should be able to defend themselves even outside of their home.
Yeah, but the whole point of the law is to be like, look, we're trying to lower the amount of guns in circulation, like outside of the home. So in order for you to want to carry one, you're going to have to propose a good reason. So like if you're like a DA or something, or if you're like a chief of a police department and you get a lot of threats. Or maybe you're just a regular person and you get a lot of Facebook threats because you spend too much time online. Like...
Yeah. Good news is, if you're on Twitter and getting threats, it's probably just bots.
Is it really? I don't know.
No, it's
All right, so
Anyway.
I'll read you the legislation that was signed. So they included
I didn't even get a chance to respond to what.
I don't give a fuck. So they increased funding to schools for school safety,
Yeah, which is good.
mental health, state crisis
Intervention.
intervention programs. Thank you. Incentive for states to include juvenile records for the national background check.
That's also probably good.
It makes between 18 and 21, you go through a harder background check. You go through a more comprehensive background check, more thorough from 18 to 21.
Okay.
So it also increases, red flag funding for red flag laws and stuff like that.
Right, so the states are still going to, on the red flag laws, the states are still going to have to pass their own legislation. And then they, in theory, could come to the Fed and be like, hey, could we get funding to enforce this legislation? That's the way I understand that. If that's the way it's practiced, who knows? States like to take money and then do gall with it.
Go
So,
golf.
well, no, not even go golf, just squander it. Like, that's what happened to a lot of COVID relief money, is it just went to states and then turned to fucking fairy dust. No, it vanished. We don't know.
So, what do you think of the law?
I don't really have a problem with it. So stricter background checks from 18 to 21 is probably a good thing. Including a juvenile record is almost certainly a good thing. I mean, so a lot of the thing with the juvie record is if you commit a crime, and I mean it could be a horrible crime when you're 14, you kill somebody because you're in a gang. Then when you turn 18, in some cases that can be sealed.
It can be stricken from the real record.
Well, no, it's not stricken. It's sealed, as in they cannot open this again. So it still exists, but it doesn't pop up on a background check. It's kind of like, so if you get a DUI in 7 years, that falls off your record, as in it can't affect your insurance anymore.
Yeah.
But it's still there.
Yeah, as long as you don't commit any other crimes between there and that 7 years, it just goes
Right.
away.
It vanishes. So I don't have a problem with that. Red flag laws is going to be my big one because red flag laws I think need to be construed in a very, very specific manner and very, very maintained. They need to be.
I'm all in favor of mental health checks. As long as they're funded by the government and I don't have to pay for anything, I'm all for it. You go in, and I'm not talking like one psychiatrist. I'm talking like 3 psychiatrists. Because, one psychiatrist may have an opinion that another doesn't and stuff like that.
Well, so the issue is, so if they're state-funded psychiatrists, I guess, to do wellness checks or something, state-funded people aren't always the best. That's why you don't ever want a public defender. There's going to be some issues with maybe they miss 1 or 2. But, I mean, it's certainly better than not having them, right? The question is, what are you going to do with the mentally... so I guess in the case of this law, you would prevent them from owning firearms. You would put a little red mark on their ledger.
We do that now.
Oh, and I'm not saying that's bad. I mean, people with severe mental illness should not have access to firearms. They're too potentially dangerous to everybody else. It's bottom line. It's the same reason I don't think we should have guns, or not. I think we should have guns. It's grenades, because their potential for harm is so much higher.
I don't think so. I don't think
I
the
do.
potential for grenades is much higher than guns. I think,
Yeah,
you can kill
for
a lot
sure.
more people with guns.
I mean,
that's why guns are primary weapons of war, not grenades.
So I think guns are probably primary weapons of war because they're useful in any scenario. So any scenario, you can't always throw a grenade and be effective.
But that's
If
what
a
I'm
gun
saying,
is.
But that's what I'm saying, though, is that it's more versatile. I think you can
Yeah,
use
but
it in more scenarios.
Like a grenade, the whole thing of a grenade is shrapnel. And shrapnel's kind of, if you just flip over a desk, shrapnel ain't going to do much. Hell, if you hit the ground and spray your body out as flat as you can possibly, the odds of you being hit by shrapnel is very low.
I ain't rolling them dice, though.
I'll take your word for it.
Yeah.
But,
so it's like...
I just don't know if I buy that a gun is less deadly than explosive.
Well, so... yeah, I would say less deadly. Never mind. So you just don't buy it. Okay. Any other... Nick, what do you think?
I mean, C4, I guess I could get.
We're not talking
C4 is also much more controlled. You have to have there's no accidental detonations on C4. There'd be a lot of accidental detonations with grenades. There would be a lot of people pulling out grenades at home saying, "Hey, look what I got!" Poof, 3 people dead.
Take out the pin by mistake, or
Well, those people would be
falls off the shelf,
right. A bunch of things.
Pipe bomb that's not
I
secure.
know jack all about.
Someone sets a
grenades,
landmine up. Someone sets a landmine.
I know they go boom, and
So, I don't know. I mean,
I really don't have... My big problem with it is, that's why I said we should save it for later, is the red flag laws. Because I think some states are going to abuse that. I think some states are going to abuse the red flag laws in general. Like the constitutionality, now that they can make them, they're going to abuse it.
I'd be willing to bet it gets more underused than overused.
I mean, so probably, because there's actually a lot less very, very liberal states. So, like, I think California might abuse a red flag law. But there's only, like, 3-4 states that are going to behave like California. The rest of us are pretty reasonable and be like, okay, you know, if we're going to have red flag laws, let's talk about how to do them where they don't get abused.
Right.
And when I say abused, I mean you're taking somebody's, like, so I get in an argument with you, and I just want to shoot off. So I'm call them and say, hey, he did X, Y, or Z. And they're going to come take your guns. And then it could take 3 months for you to get them back. 4 months, whoever knows. Bureaucracy. Mm-hmm. You know, however long it takes the judge to review the case. And that's how I think it would be abused, is, you know, spurned exes, or people who don't particularly like your politics, or people who don't particularly like you in general. You know? We need to have something in place to at least prevent that from happening. So, like, a very...
The judge is there.
So a precursory review, so like something where they don't go into detail, they're just going to skim through and see if this is accurate. So it doesn't take you the 6 months to get your guns back. It takes you maybe a couple weeks. Like, really, if you're undeservedly accused, I think it should be recognized inside of 2 weeks. I think you ought to be like, he should skim through it and be like, okay, what's this relation to this person? What's the complaint? Doesn't have any merit?
Yeah.
And then, if it doesn't, be like, okay, look, you got to give him his guns back.
I think the problem is that it's going to be really subjective.
Yeah.
So it is. I mean, and that's the power of the judicial system.
Yeah, that's the thing. I don't know who you give that power to. Do you give that to, like, a DA? Is that a judge thing? Because they got a lot of shit going on.
That's true.
So I don't know who you give that to.
And I'm not for increasing the judicial budget either.
Well,
so
I'll ask this then.
I guess it would be states, though, wouldn't it? It'd be state taxes that have to increase.
So what, if any, gun control would you advocate for?
So further gun control. We're going to get to...
Yeah.
I'm going to... I don't know. So I would say that the predominant problem with gun crime in the United States isn't going to be the firearms themselves. So if you haven't seen, like, one of our first podcasts was the Social Dilemma podcast, wasn't it? Mm-hmm. And we start talking about how school shootings in particular and teenage suicide with guns, like, spikes after the creation of Facebook.
So
I don't think it's the guns, and I think that's evidenced, you know, by people in older generations will tell you, like, I rode to school with a 30-30 hanging in my back window. No one ever got shot.
So in 1950, there were 0 school shootings, and we can track them. They had, like, 1960s, like, 1 school shooting, 1970s, like, 3, and then it starts drag, like, 1980.
It explodes.
14, 1990, 102, 2000, 300. It starts to go up, and it's mostly it's a generational thing.
I was going to say it's a societal issue that something's happened specifically in the 80s and 90s to millennials, and then it has continued to happen to Gen X, Gen Z.
Yeah. But then we can't blame social media, though, can we?
I would say you could theoretically. Now I'm not. I can at least see the correlation. Like I said, when you see Facebook come on the scene is when you see the explosion in school shootings. Okay. Like, that's the conclusion we drew when doing the Social Dilemma pod. It's at least a very, very odd correlation. Yeah. Okay. So,
I think we should say, because you're interacting with a lot more people than your brain can physically handle. We're not meant to talk to thousands of people.
So I think we could spend an entire podcast talking about the issues social media has created for us. I'm going to go ahead and say I think the root issue is it's changed how we interact with one another, period. Like, we interact with each other with a lot less respect now.
So social media makes kids kill other kids?
So
no,
maybe.
Video games do.
Well, so it's not video games.
Definitely not.
I don't think it's desensitization to violence either, because as somebody who...
I think it's a cultural thing.
Well, yeah, it's a societal issue.
So I watched this one guy. He's an Irish guy. He goes. The thing in Ireland between America is, in Ireland, like, you can get in a bar fight and not be scared. In America, you bump into somebody, you're afraid he's going to pull a gun on you. He goes,
guns do dissuade violence.
He goes, a guy in a
No,
bar.
they do not.
Yeah, they do. They for sure do.
How?
There are more defensive uses of firearms in the United States every year than there are violent uses.
His example was like...
That doesn't change the fact that there are a lot of violent uses.
There are a lot of violent, but there are still more defensive uses.
Let's say there's
nobody has any guns.
We have no guns. Say we have no guns. I spit in your wife's face at a bar. We have to fist fight now. Now we do this in America. I spit in your wife's face. You go to get up to fight me. I pull out a 9mm, point at your head, said, "Sit the fuck back down."
Then you go to jail. That's a law. It's brandishing.
But once he gets out, he can still have his gun.
Yeah.
I don't know if brandishing allows you to. I don't think
and
it's
not all states have.
Brandishing might be a federal
really
law.
Enforce any anti-gun laws we have. Like you're not like if you're a domestic violence person, like if you abuse your wife, then you're supposed to have your guns taken away. If you're a felon, you're supposed to have your guns taken away.
You're not even supposed to live in a house that has guns.
And I think we all know a severe amount of felons that we know that have multiple firearms.
So
I don't know any felons.
There's a little loophole. With
more people are felons than you think. It's just like a shocking statistic. It's like 1 in 8 or something like that are felons.
I don't know any felons.
So the little loophole with felons is muzzleloaders aren't considered rifles. They're not considered firearms.
Well, no. So the felons aren't going through a loophole. According to Wyatt, they're getting just regular old firearms. Yep. They're not owning muzzleloaders. They're just getting handguns.
It's like muzzleloaders are the only guns you can buy.
So is the issue that our laws on the books aren't being enforced?
It's not being enforced.
Okay, so is that because states aren't enforcing them?
Probably,
probably
the police.
So the Fed's not coming in.
I want to say. So
hang on, because a felon owning a gun means he's not getting a background checked, or it's being just ignored.
Or his wife buys it. I mean, there could be a million.
So have you seen?
Okay, well,
do we all know who Burt Kreischer, the comedian, is?
Yeah.
Garrett, do you know?
No.
He's a comedian. He goes, and this got him in trouble with his gun dealer. He goes to buy an AR-15 from his gun dealer. He goes, "Can't give you your guns." He goes, "Why? All your stuff's in your wife's name. Your company, everything's in your wife's name. We can't. You failed the background check." He goes, "Oh, it's great. The system works." He goes, "Oh, you're getting your fucking guns. We just need your wife to sign this one thing." And it's a huge loophole. And he goes back to buy another gun. And the guy who owns the gun store goes, "Hey, you know the fucking feds came and got us in trouble, right? Because of your stand-up."
So, okay.
Oh, that's hilarious.
You can't, let's not be treating comedians as everything they say actually happened. Like, these are people who create funny stories for a living. But... do I think this federally licensed firearms dealer said, "Hey, your federal background check came back bad, but don't worry, I'm going to give you all these guns anyway"? I don't think that actually happened. Well, I think it's a story created for comedic effect.
I mean, here's the thing. Let's
did they get shut down by the Fed?
No, of course not. They own guns.
No, there's an investigation though.
There's no way they're getting shut down. Because I mean,
probably didn't do it.
I think the ATF, is that who it is? I mean, they don't have the
dog killers are us.
They don't have the budget of like Las Vegas PD. Like they've got something like 3,000 agents.
Really?
Yeah. Somebody one of you two look up how many total ATF agents, like field agents, they have. And it's a shockingly low number to monitor
50 states.
The United States of America.
That's kind of crazy. Alcohol, tobacco, and firearms. Well, so tobacco, how regulated do you actually have to be these days?
1,700 agents.
Yeah, I thought it was something shockingly low. So the 3,000 number I was thinking of might be total agents, and then field agents is...
So nowhere near the amount you would have to inspect every federally licensed firearms dealer. Correct.
Just think that's just firearms.
Right.
That's not counting alcohol.
So what's 1,700 divided by 50?
Their total employees, so that's special agents, 1,700. Their total employees is 5,000.
Okay, so, but we're for purposes... Yeah, the paper pushers we don't really care about. We need people on site investigating.
Doing the Wacos.
No.
Historically, they're bad.
Look, someone's got to shoot the fucking dog, all right? And if it's not going to be them... But... I get that is incredibly low. That's far too low to enforce.
You look at their budget too.
I think it's like 1.4.
So we have a what? I think what was our budget last year?
Oh, it's something trillion, right?
Yeah,
it's 3 and 4, something like that.
Yeah, because it was over GDP by.
That's your phone actually.
1.4 billion approximately is how much the fund.
So a drop in the fucking bucket in a $1 trillion budget, it's nothing. So again, I guess the question here is going to become, do we need new gun legislation or do we need enforcement of what's currently there? By the Fed and the state. So the Fed does have gun laws. Like, no
Yeah.
felonies.
Yeah.
But
the thing is that it doesn't seem like they have the manpower to enforce that, and they're probably not going to get it.
I mean, so you would have to petition Congress for more funding to the ATF, which is going to rub a lot of Republicans the wrong way. Mm-hmm. And really a lot of people who don't like government authority in general the wrong way.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So, again, ATF doesn't have the best reputation. I mean, so what is it, Ruby Ridge and then Waco.
They have a lot. They have a lot.
I mean, again, there's a reason I called them Dog Killers R Us. They come in, they shoot your dog. That's standard.
They burn you alive.
Or they shoot your family and then get pissed when you're upset about it. That was Ruby Ridge, right? Like, they shot his wife and his kid. And then they're like, why is he mad? Why wouldn't he just give up? Like, yeah, I'm coming after you too, guy. Like,
yeah. Goodness. I mean, I'd like to see more of a little bit of everything. I think we have too many guns. Maybe some collecting of guns would be nice.
Well, so we already have a voluntary return system.
The thing is that it doesn't... I want, felons to have their guns taken away. I don't want it voluntary.
Okay, so that's fair. I mean, so that would be enforcement, though, right? That would be coming in, felons can't own guns. Let's send agents to felons' homes and take their firearms.
But then we're going to have Wacos. We're going to have standoffs.
Yeah, we do have some crazy people with guns.
All right, that's
probably a vast majority probably just give up the gun rather than get in a shootout. But there's some crazy.
So there's going to be some issue here, and that is going to be the spouses aren't felons. So let's assume that I am a felon, and I am married to not a felon. So as a felon, I can't live in a house with guns.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
So what if my wife wants to own guns?
She's going to have to either give up you or the guns, man.
So isn't that a violation of her right, though?
I think not really.
I think so. Really. She hasn't done anything.
Not really, because, you share assets with that person. And, I get it, she didn't do the crime or whatever caused him to get the felony, but the fact is that that's still a felon. It's the same, you can make the same argument for a mentally ill person. If I have schizophrenia and my wife doesn't, can she own guns? Fuck no. Nobody would argue that.
Because he's just going to take your guns. Yeah, so that's what happened in Uvalde. Well, no.
Half the voices in his head are telling him to shoot somebody.
Right. I mean, so I could get on board. I definitely think we need more enforcement of gun laws on the books. There is going to be some gray area, though, and people are not going to be happy about it. So, again, just that specific example, people are going to be very upset.
Yeah, they can cry about
just punch.
Let's say we go the European or the Australian route. We do a total gun ban.
Yeah, you'll never get them all.
And then
100% you'll never get them all.
Oh no, there's too many guns.
You won't get a percentage because every Republican I know thinks if the government's going to come take their guns, they're like, I'll just go throw them in a lake somewhere.
Then that gun's useless.
Oh no, I mean when I say throw them in a lake, I mean throw them in a lake,
Also hide them.
Yeah.
Where you
that's just what people are going to do. And, I think that's what a lot of majority people, at least are going to hide one, two.
I don't think it would matter. We're not going to get it passed.
No, never. But
the NRA has millions of dollars invested in these people.
It's actually a lot less. Well, no.
Well, it's less now than it used to be.
Do y'all think the NRA should have canceled their Houston thing?
I think the NRA shouldn't be able to.
It was 2 weeks after the Uvalde shooting. Bad timing. You probably could have postponed it.
I mean, Houston's probably 6 hours away from Uvalde.
It's still, bad timing. Maybe.
I mean, would you have said the same thing if the NRA hosted a fundraising campaign in Kansas City? I'm saying, does the proximity to it? Because again, Texas is a huge state.
It doesn't really matter to me.
Right, that's kind of what I'm saying. And it's not like NRA condoned the shooting either. They're a gun rights organization.
It's kind of hard to pretend you care as you're crying into money as you're doing this fundraising.
Oh, well, politicians do it all the time.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I sincerely think the people at the NRA may have not cared about the shooting because they knew that their pocketbooks was about to get a little bit more filled. Because, it's just kind of a thing. After
with gun legislation being passed?
No. With gun sales happening. So after mass shootings, we see this massive increase in...
Well, that's true. That's why we saw, after the 2020 riots, we saw a huge increase in...
And, the NRA was just
oh, no.
That's awesome.
Well, so that's what happens. Is so when people feel threatened, anything could happen at any given time, firearm sales spike. Mm-hmm. That's what happens. That is the way of things. And it's because people be like, well, I need to be able to defend myself. And a lot of these people are buying just more guns.
Yeah. We could require better firearm technology. So you know how like we have like emission standards, we could have firearm manufacturing standards. So what a lot of people are advocating for is like finger
Oh,
prints on
yeah.
the guns for it to operate.
See, the problem with that is, from what I've seen, they're very fucky. They don't always work. They don't always let the person shoot.
So here's what I would like to
On
do.
the side of caution.
So here's what I would like to do. I would like to still have, so there's approximately 500,000 defensive uses of firearms in the United States every year, according to the FBI. I would like to see that number stay the same, while the number of violent uses of firearms reduce. However we can do that. Does that make sense? So the fingerprint technology,
Yeah.
if it works,
Okay.
You're not going to like the answer. It's going to start taking guns away from
well, so again, that reduces this $500,000 number
Not
here.
if we keep them in the hands of good people.
I mean, so...
Start taking them from
I
felons.
mean, so maybe.
Maybe.
You figure the people who use them defensively only are good, quote unquote, good people, correct? Like, I mean, you didn't pull the gun until another gun was gonna be used against you, or at least another weapon.
Right.
So maybe and again, I'm not opposed to this fingerprint idea, but I do, like Nick said, I don't want a gun being needed and then it not be able to go off.
We could limit the amount of guns per household. We could do that. That way, everyone has at least one gun.
So per household,
Yeah.
like number of people in the household.
No, probably per person. We could do
So
it per person.
each individual can own.
We could do a registry.
I don't know that a registry would help.
Well, it would help us figure out to be able to capture the bad guys. Because ballistics, you can figure out which gun it came out of, and then you can just trace that gun back to somebody. And if they sold that gun in a private sale, you can be like, well,
Why do you not own it anymore?
Yeah. And then
Who'd you
that
sell it to?
person...
Well, I don't have a problem with private sales.
I do.
Why?
No.
Well, yeah. Are you kidding me?
No, like so. If I
You
want to
sell
buy
to
a gun,
anybody.
if I want a gun from Nick,
Yeah, like we did.
so
that.
maybe
Yeah,
maybe
but
okay.
you
What
don't
if what if we
have a car.
restrict private firearm sales to family members?
So technically, when we traded firearms,
It's not going to do anything for felons. I mean, so I could go buy one, give them to you, you felon bastard, or sell it to you,
Right.
and then you've got a gun. You didn't have to go through a background
that's
check.
what gangs usually
But
do. They have one guy who has a clean record, and they'll go buy the firearms.
That poor bastard.
He's usually white.
Wow. I'm just gonna just skim right on by that.
But, yeah, so, like, what we could do, I mean, we could just make everyone register their guns. People don't want to do that because people are psychotic.
People are paranoid.
Yeah.
I mean, so again, if you do a gun registry, then the principal fear is that when the government comes to take them, they're going to know the guns you have.
Yeah.
Again, I really don't think it matters because what are they going to do? Again, so let's just say in theory I own 20 guns and we have done this registry and the government says, okay, now we've outlawed guns. We're coming to get these 20. When they show up, there ain't going to be 20 guns there.
Then you become a felon, I guess.
Well, I mean, and what are they going to do? Like, so are you going to haul me in because I don't possess the guns anymore?
They're
They
going to
haul
ask
a
you what
lot of people in for a lot less.
Yeah.
Well, the ATF has shot people for a lot less, too.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say.
So,
I mean, you think that's bad. An ounce of weed used to get you 20. Like,
yeah.
an ounce of weed is a lot more than you think, folks.
An ounce of weed, well, I don't know how much of that is, for sure.
The lying bastard.
But, no, I mean, an ounce of weed in Oklahoma could have got you 20.
So my biggest issue with like the total number of guns per person is like a lot of people like to collect guns.
I mean, if you take out the firing pin, I wouldn't even count that as a gun.
That's, well, I don't think it does count as a gun. Just like you can own a tank if they remove the mechanism, you can own a tank that just drives. You can't own a tank that fires.
Yeah.
So,
Well, you can under the right circumstances.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Well, so for one, you have
I
to.
think you can be tank
Why-
driver.
the
service.
government has a price. And if you can pay that price, you can own a tank
I
that
know. I know. One of
fires.
the rules though, if you own a tank, you have to take off the metal treads, put rubber treads, so they don't tear up roads. But like me personally, I love collecting. Like, I'd love to have like World War II and one guns, like a Garand, a Springfield, a Luger. I'd love to
I
have.
mean, really,
those.
any bolt action 30-06 is an M1 Grand. Like,
But it's not.
but so.
It doesn't have the history.
Do you want a gun that shot Nazis, or do you want a gun that could have?
Well,
Like-
I can take that M1 Garand and go beat your ass at a shooting contest.
I mean, they were heavy guns, so they would be pretty accurate. But
They're great.
I mean, so if you're a collector, I'm struggling with the number. So what's the number we're going to put per person? So let's say you are a legal person. How many guns can you own?
I don't know, 3 max.
Handgun,
So-
shotgun, rifle.
Handgun, shotgun, rifle.
Yeah.
As many muzzleloaders as you want. They're not right. They're not technically firearms.
Okay, I was gonna say 5. So let's call it 4. We'll split the diff, right? So handgun, shotgun for home defense, rifle for domestic issues.
Well, I would also, I mean, this is just me. I mean, I would also consider anything semi-automatic out the window.
Oh no.
So you're going to ban those shotguns?
No,
Shotguns.
you can do shotguns.
Well, so pump action
I'm
is
not a gun
semi-auto.
guy, so I don't know the terminology.
That's good.
But keep shotguns, get away of semi-automatic
I can
rifles.
show you a semi-automatic shotgun.
So
right now.
anything besides a revolver, actually a revolver is still semi-auto, isn't it?
Double action is single action. I can go get guns and show y'all the difference.
Yeah. So we're not going to show guns on YouTube, but
You'll be fine.
um,
We're not getting monetized anyway.
But I mean, I'm okay with all bolt actions. Like you can keep, honestly, like you may not even.
so I think even a bolt action might. No, I don't think a bolt action qualifies as. There is a definition of semi-auto,
Depends
which is
on
going
how-
to be very problematic because
depends on how fast you can pull the bolt or do the lever.
right. So it's
Yeah, lever action. I think you're good with me with lever action still. I think those can stay.
I think semi-automatics have to be gas operated. Meaning,
no. I think it's one trigger pull, one bullet is a semi-auto.
Yeah, but you don't have to bolt or lever. You don't have to manually.
There's no secondary action, but a pump action shotgun is semi-auto.
No.
I would be cool with.
Okay,
Another
hold on.
thing that people don't talk about. What about ammunition
So
control? I'm cool with you owning as many guns as you want, but what if we put a limit on shells?
I mean, we kind of do.
I mean, so you would have to put such a strict limit on shells that it would be. I don't think so. I would rather have I think a gun limit than ammunition.
To go back on Garrett.
And we already kind of do. So I think if you own like more than
1,000 rounds, you get put on a list.
I mean, the list hasn't stopped much.
No.
They
just put you on one.
Well, so buying a lot of ammunition doesn't mean you're a terrorist. You know what I'm saying? Like, so
Right.
I am a prepper. I'm a doomsday prepper, and I own a lot of ammunition.
You're gonna die before you get to use all that.
No, so I belong to this segment of society that's delusional enough to think they would be the ones to survive a nuclear holocaust or something. You know, I want to be prepared for coming out the other side instead of dying like everybody else.
So while you're saying bolt action, let me run down what you think is fine and not fine to use.
I mean, so I told you, like, I'm not a gun nut, so, like, by all means, you can correct all this, but a fucking lever action, those are good to me. You can only kill so many people with a lever action.
You'd be surprised how many rounds you can put in a Henry too.
There is a reason that there is a preferred weapon for these shootings. It's because, number one, they're easy to use. The ammo is considerably cheaper. Fair to say.
No, I mean, yeah.
cheaper.
I mean, so it's cheaper than the 30-06 for certain.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
You know,
like
but it's also
308s,
really low. It's also a really low caliber.
Right,
so
that's what I'm saying. Like, it's easy to use. I mean, they're pretty versatile. I mean, you can get wood stock, silicon stock. You can get what's the other types of stocks?
composite.
Yeah, composite. Yeah, you can.
I think you make
whatever
composite
you want
instead of
with
silicon,
that
but-
weapon.
So any mods are on the table.
Yeah, super easy. And it's semi-automatic.
So you're talking like my AR-15.
Bam.
My AR-15 is gone.
I would like it to be. I mean, any bolt action.
So is it just because it's
Those
semi-automatic?
No, it's
Is
not
it
just that.
is it the speed of fire? Is it
It's probably the amount of bullets, which I understand is going to be subjective versus like a person. But like, I mean, you got to take the fucking average. I mean, let's be real. Like, you could. I mean, I'm going to be able to shoot a 223 as fast as any fucking expert shooting a fucking musket, guaranteed.
Like I could slam
It's not
fire
a revolver.
shot.
Like if it's like the one you have to cock it back. It's not a
It's
revolver.
a single action.
Yeah. So like, I don't care how fast he is doing this or whatever the Cowboys used to do. Like, it's not gonna matter.
So here's my issue: is you're going to limit how many people might get shot in, let's say, a mass shooting situation. Let's take Vegas for instance. Okay.
Right.
So if he's got a lever action, let's say he's got a Henry. Okay. So what's the Henry hold, Nick?
Depends on
Is
the
it
caliber.
15? Is it 15?
Depends on the caliber.
I thought it was. Yeah,
Let's call it with 30-30.
Yeah, 15.
30-30. So mine can hold. Mine's a Marlin. Mine can hold 6 rounds, I think.
Okay. Okay, so we got 6 rounds compared to what is it? Let's go with the 30-round clip, right? 30-round clip, and let's also assume that you've got preloaded clips. Now your Marlin doesn't have a clip, right?
No, it's got a tube.
Yeah. So they load slower. Yeah. Now that is an option. So,
You also got to think you don't have to load the full tube. You can just cock, load, slam, cock, slam.
Well, no. So what I'm considering here is we could make everything kind of tube bed. Like we just get rid of magazines altogether. So as a hunter, I have to have 2 different kinds of magazines for my AR. I have a hunting magazine, which previously up until 2019, I think Oklahoma only allowed you to have a 5-round magazine for semi-automatic rifles to hunt. It's unfair. Spray and pray, irresponsible, stuff like that.
Yeah, not a clean. Was the rule. But now that we
now I can hunt with a 30-round clip.
Because we have
But
hogs and we don't care.
if we restricted every firearm to be specifically tube fed, you're only going to get, let's say, even if we put it at 15 rounds, it's 15 rounds, and then that's, I don't know what the response time of police is.
So
I don't know.
So the reason.
So the problem is a lot of this is going to get in the way. So I don't think that reduces this 500,000 number. Giving you 15 shots probably doesn't reduce, because you're only going to take, if you can't unalive somebody with 15 shots, then, I mean,
You probably weren't.
You've dissuaded them at the very least.
So here's the problem with tube feds, is they're not like stacked cartridges. Tube feds have to be snub nosed.
Hollow point?
No.
You mean flat? Yeah.
So everyone knows normal bullet point. There's a point. It's pointing. Yeah. Snub nose means it's round, meaning you get very bad velocity and over distance. There's a reason for this. So the reason they're not pointed is because the recoil in the tube can cause a chain reaction of going off. So what happens if it's pointed? It hits the firing pit of
everything else in that tube.
So the one in the very back, everything else slides forward, and it slams back on the firing pit, causing a chain reaction, causing your gun to explode. So Hornady, the company, makes 30-30 rounds that have plastic bendable tips. They're called velocity rounds. And that kind of fixes it, but it doesn't give you greater distance because they're still fat rounds. So if we did 2 figs, we have to totally revolutionize 5.56, 2.23s. And really, 30-30 is the only, other than like 30-30, 45-70, your 44-45, your 357, 35 mag, like those are the only snub nose pistol rounds.
I'm going to start with what most of the people, well, I'm not even going to say most, because most people are in favor of some I don't want to say common sense gun reform, because what some people mean common sense gun reform does not mean like what I think some common sense gun reform would be. But we should be able to own arms that help defend ourselves, 1, from foreign invasion, and 2, from domestic tyranny.
I mean, so foreign invasion, we're kind of good. We have such a vastly...
I don't know. Have you seen the way Trudeau's been looking at us lately? He looks awful invadey. Okay?
So, the reason the U.S. is uninvadable is we have such a vast terrain. First of all, we have 2
better
giant
find some
mountains.
fucking wood.
We have 2 giant mountains that separate us.
Okay.
And we're so large. I mean,
So you're saying that hypothetically we're uninvadable, and okay, I can understand that. We can have a conversation about that on a different podcast.
Most generals will tell you we're uninvadable.
Okay, so different conversation for a different podcast. You might have very good evidence to back up why you say that, okay? But I'm saying under the presumption we are invaded. Like, we are invaded, okay? We should have the arms capable to defend ourselves. So,
well, your 30-06 would be just fine.
Not going up against a fully equipped military though.
Well, then your
so
AR
hang
is
on.
not going to do anything.
No, that's not true. I mean, your AR is pretty close to an
marginally more effective than whatever other gun you might have.
Yeah, so marginally.
Like, your bolt
But
action.
It's
still-
not going to affect the output.
But you're perpetuating, so you're not just one person with an AR. We're theoretically pushing this out to, let's say, 10,000 people who might all
think
own.
we'd get organized that quick?
So with the state government, I think so, and with
I think most
with a
people would
foreign
say-
body, with a
I think
foreign
so.
body. Well, it is 2022.
I think the days
I
of
would-
Red Dawn are over.
I would like to think that we would mobilize very quickly to defend our own homes.
I don't think so. I think it'd be every man for himself.
Yeah,
That's
I don't.
terrible.
We've
Terrifying.
seen it. We've seen it too much in natural disaster. Like, I mean, I'm old enough to remember Katrina.
Well, so you can't fight a natural disaster, though.
Huh?
You
That's the
can help-
thing.
you can help
can't.
the people
So you
after.
can. But there were plenty of volunteers in Katrina
in
too.
moments of crisis, people overwhelmingly choose themselves.
So that's the thing.
Like,
when an invasion,
Self-preservation
you're
matters
doomed- you're-
now to the American culture now more than anything.
but defending your home from invasion. So again, let's say commies hit the coast of California, right?
Are you going to go to California to defend California?
Well, fuck no. I'm buying ammunition here.
Exactly.
But
So
all
you
of
don't-
California mobilizes,
It's-
right?
So it's not a problem until it reaches
It's not gonna
Oklahoma.
matter. But yeah, that's
Well, no.
that's why-
It is for sure a problem. It's just not a problem I can immediately help with.
Yeah, you can. You call, get in your truck and go. We have a highway system now. You can get to California in about 10 hours.
But I don't think that it's not just you. I wouldn't do it. He wouldn't do it. Nobody would fucking do it. No one's going to California.
To defend what is not your home.
Right? Yeah. No. And not if they took over Oklahoma City. None of us are piling up in a truck to go defend Oklahoma City. No, we're staying. At best, it would be neighborhood militias. But honestly, I think more often than that, I think neighbor would turn against neighbor. 100%.
I don't. So again, prepper. A lot of people feel that way. That's not just you. So, I would like to think that specifically in an example of foreign invasion, that Americans could put their bullshit behind them and be like, "Hey, I don't like you very much, but I like him less."
Yeah. I mean,
I would like to think that.
I see it, but I see your logic. I just can't see it.
The only people with that mindset are like the Amish and the Mennonites, who actually they're the only people left in America that care about communities.
Yeah,
I don't think so. I mean, the Christian church, at least small Southern
we've
churches, compare a lot.
bred such an individualist culture. I don't think that we, and I don't think that Christianity, like the Christian denominations, would pair up either. I think they'd be just as chaotic as everybody.
I don't think so.
I think 100%.
I think
even churches are less
Churches are so small nowadays that I think. I mean, I can go, and my church is pretty large.
Yeah, I mean,
It-
there would be a couple for sure, but I'm just saying, like, they would be
think a
isolated.
lot.
They would be isolated, is what they would be.
Maybe, but the point is, if you don't have them armed well enough to defend themselves, the possibility goes from slim to nil.
Well,
You know what I'm saying?
I mean, what's better, a 30-06 or a 5.56?
I mean, so it depends what you're going for.
I mean, would it be
Like, so again, like a 9mm is more deadly when it hits you than a 223 because it's a broader head. Like,
yeah.
and it's a lower velocity, which means it's more
So here's the thing: would you rather
splattery.
Would you rather be in the
Scientific
middle of
term.
would you rather be in the? It's ballistics. Would you rather be in the streets with the 5.56, or would you rather be in the fucking trees like the Vietnamese and shooting from the rooftops?
I mean, why not do both?
Well, you can't
I mean,
shoot very far with the 5.56.
Again, the Afghanis held us out for so long
They
fighting
didn't
guerrilla
just-
warfare.
they didn't just have
We
the
won the
Abrams.
revolution fighting guerrilla warfare. The Vietnamese, the Koreans,
The difference
the Chinese
the
and
difference is,
Koreans.
so we don't have we do have the terrain. We're not heavily jungled.
But I think you're misunderstanding. We didn't beat them because they outgunned us. We beat them just because they had better willpower. The guns are
But we
irrelevant.
lost. I think you meant. You said we beat them because they had better.
Oh yeah, we lost to them because they just
And, like,
outwilled
So you think that the primary force, but again, like you still you can have all the. I don't know. You're saying you can have all the
Not
willpower.
relevant.
Would you rather be like, I don't know the total range of a 5.56, but it's not the same as a 7 mag or a 30-06 or even a 308. So you can shoot a lot
Well,
farther
not all
and be a lot more
engagements
accurate.
are 500 yards. I mean,
No, that's true.
I would say most engagements are probably under 100 to be
The most-
I mean, I'm not a military guy. I have
Most
no
of the,
idea.
but like,
But
I mean, especially urban settings.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
your
Like,
bolt,
especially in the Middle
like your
East,
bolt
like-
actions are the most accurate rifle you can get.
Well, it probably come in the most accuracy has more to do with caliber than because you need the appropriate amount of spin and the appropriate amount of gunpowder to force it.
You need about 1 to 24 twist rate.
Don't get me lying to you, sir.
But so like realistically, you get a semi-automatic 30-06.
But
There you go. I mean,
I don't even know that the Second Amendment was there for an individual's right to hold off tyranny, or not tyranny, but well, that too. a foreign invasion.
Oh, I would say so because we've talked about how Thomas Jefferson. What you said that Thomas Jefferson would have encouraged an overthrow of the government every 10 years.
Oh, 100%.
So I think for sure he at least regarded it as an individual's right to defense against domestic tyranny.
But I mean, my thing is that the way the Second Amendment was written was for the federal government or state militias to fight. Really, so it's probably to have the state militia fend off until they can get a federal
force
army
together.
Yeah, that's probably what the Second Amendment was written for at the time. To me, it wasn't like I said.
It worked effectively in Texas.
It really wasn't an individual thing until very recently, and that's what gun control used to be extremely common.
I don't know that anybody really. So gun control, as in when you could carry it, was probably extremely common. But everyone being able to own guns was also pretty was the rule. Because again, you lived past even in probably the late early 1900s. You lived west of the Appalachia, and it was a kill field. You were just as likely to be scalped as to do the scalping.
Right, and see, but that would be a justified reason to have a firearm.
Literally endangered for your life.
But in New York City, walking around, I don't know that. That's why the law was written, is because they just didn't want people walking around drunk with handguns.
Yeah,
shooting people.
So I do. I guess to get back to the New York law, I do think it is deliberately vague. I think it's basically I can deny you because I don't like you, and that would be my only issue.
Oh man, it's a judge though. It's a judge's.
Yeah, but again, judges have political bents.
Judges, not the best moral people sometimes.
I mean, they're the ultimate version of
I would say that judges kind of are expected to be the highest moral authority in our government.
Have you seen what some of these people...
In our government. Not so they're not a priest.
No, but I'll have to do this after the podcast. I'll explain why I don't think that. But you should see some of what the judges say about rape victims. They pretty much don't care about the victim.
So you could find bad people in any profession.
It's alarming a lot of judges that say certain stupid things about rape victims, but that's not the topic.
That'd be really disheartening.
I'll tell
you. So you don't think fighting off foreign invasion is a appropriate excuse to keep the arms you would outlaw? Nick, how do you feel about that?
So I just think it's a weak justification.
Kind of.
Not saying it's not that's
because it's not likely.
It's not the only justification. I just find that one particularly weak.
Yeah,
whether it's foreign or domestic tyranny.
In modern times, boots on the ground's going away. We're using drones. We're using
meh. I don't think so. I do think drones have been used a lot, specifically for targeted bombings. But as far as individual,
and again. There's other greater reasons why America is uninvadable. One, we have the two largest oceans. Anyway, okay.
That's true. I mean, so we see you coming from literally thousands of miles away.
D-Day, which took place in the what's the little
English Channel?
Yeah,
English Channel, was already such a risk because even that short channel where you can see France from a certain spot of Britain was such a short risk because it could take too long. We had to fake out the Germans to get a sliver of a hope for Normandy to succeed.
Sure, I mean your boats on the water are literally fish in a barrel.
We see,
and with satellite technology now, we're gonna
automatic targeting.
Right, we're gonna see you leave Beijing, and we're gonna be well,
man, they passed Japan, and that looks like a lot of battleships. Oh man, Hawaii, start sending them.
I mean, so naval warfare probably is over.
So, and not only that, if say you land in California, say you take California, you got the Rockies. You go from the other side, you got the Appalachians. I mean,
that's not even. We've talked about this, but if you invade California, the first thing you got to get through is the Mojave, the literally hottest places on Earth, in 50 pounds of fucking gear and metal.
they're throughout history,
and there's not even water. Hell, there won't be water in Las Vegas in the next 10 years.
Actually, no. I'll tell you later about that. That's pretty cool how they solved that issue.
I thought Lake Mead was drying up.
But they put the thing so far down that Lake Mead's lowest point, it still pumps water.
That doesn't mean it won't ever run out, though. right?
I
I mean, like,
don't know how it works.
if you've seen the pictures coming out of Lake Mead, it's kind of
It's
horrifying.
scary.
Yeah,
Whenever you figure out that like
supplies most of Nevada,
most of the entire West, like Colorado, New Mexico,
like the Hoover Dam might be done. If it gets to a certain point, the Hoover Dam can't push out. But otherwise, like there's other reasons why America isn't invadable.
I mean, so we for sure have a lot of natural defenses. I think we touched on this a little bit about
it's just landmass. Like 2 hours in Europe, you can be from France to Berlin. 2 hours is not even across Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Like you're in the same state here.
So it's a logistical problem.
Yeah.
Conquering America.
Like the reason, so I think we all learned Russian Ukraine. Like Ukraine's so small that 2 hours you can go from top of Ukraine, bottom of Ukraine, and you still have 30 minutes to spare. It's so hard to do that here.
Yeah. I mean, so the states are basically individual European countries.
We have and Oklahoma is a very small
most of us.
state.
Texas is 13 individual fucking European countries,
Oklahoma's even a really small state. We're a small state.
but we gave the Indians as little as we could.
And we chipped them out of it again. Serbians, you dumb bluff. But my issue with lights is you ban semi-automatics, and that's almost all shotguns.
Well, I told you I wasn't a gun nut. I'm not trying to keep a shotgun.
So that's going to be the thing. Is a semi-automatic
we have to make up new definitions. We have to. I mean, semi-automatic is a made-up definition.
I mean, I guess in principle, all words are made-up words.
But yeah, we can make up our own legal definition. Like sometimes semi-automatic doesn't legally doesn't even mean the same.
So I think what you're gonna end up having to have is a list of firearms that these are allowed, or these set of actions, or this fire rate, or this firing mechanism. Yeah. You're gonna have to go through, and I mean, there's gonna be a lot of legalese. But so just foundationally, you're saying shotguns are fine.
Yeah.
Right. It's the rifles that similar to an AR-15, an AK-47.
Yeah, so I don't have a problem with rifling.
No, but what about a semi-30-06? Holds 10 rounds.
I would. My heart says I don't like that. I mean, 10 rounds isn't very much.
What about 5 rounds?
But I mean, yeah, I could get behind.
So, are you? Is there any?
I mean, I would do. Probably a limit on magazines too. Not a limit on how many you can own, but how many you can have in one clip.
Okay.
What about carbines?
What's the difference?
So carbines shoot pistol rounds. They don't shoot rifle rounds. That's a carbine.
Yeah. Okay. I was actually a gun that I saw the other day that had rotating barrels that they linked up. It had a mechanism. I guess $700, but you literally rotated it like a Gatling gun, and it would go from a 22 to a shotgun to a 30-30.
Yeah,
it was can bomb.
Those don't work very well.
Yeah, I'm sure. But anyway.
Yeah, shotguns are fine. Revolvers are mostly fine. The 1911, the semi-auto pistols. Those are actually.
What about
pistols are still the majority, right, of deaths?
Oh yeah, hands down.
Yeah,
hands
so
down.
those are really, if we want to stop the gun stuff, that's what we got to do.
And that's because pistols are used in gang crime, and they're used in gang crime because they're cheaper and more easily available. And the 9mm is the most commonly sold ammunition round in the United States, and I think it might also be in the world, but don't quote me. The AK-47 ammunition round might actually outsell it, but
the AKs are very popular.
Yeah, I mean, especially outside the U.S. Really, every country besides us prefers
AKs. There's a huge debate: AR versus AK. I'm an AK guy. I like AKs more. I think AKs.
I think it's all down to who manufactured it, but that's a different debate.
So, I mean, so is it the caliber that you don't like?
Well, I think it's the amount of people you can kill. Is what I don't.
There's the lethal potential.
Yeah, I mean, I understand a gun in my hands isn't the same as a gun in a Navy SEAL's hands.
But a 22 is just as deadly. It's all about
I mean, I get that.
And a 22 can hold more rounds.
Yeah, so you got to cut the rounds then.
So we're just talking across the board. Let's call it 6. 6 shooters.
Yeah,
have 6 rounds. So let's call it 6.
Yeah, I'm cool with even in a pistol 10. I'm cool with that.
Well, so pistols are. I mean, so a 9mm round's got more more stopping power than a 223. So that's going to be the thing. Is there's a lot of different mechanisms. So people see the big black scary gun and say that looks like a military weapon, and I'm afraid. And I'm not saying that's what you're doing, but I'm saying that is what some people do. Whereas I could take a 30-06 with a wooden stock that does the same fucking thing, and it's not afraid. They're not afraid of it.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
One's an assault weapon, one's a not. Well, really, they're the same gun.
So, are you like, is it the ballistics you want to look at?
So,
Well, what do you mean?
I think he said what he wants to limit the amount of people you can kill in one go. You know.
So if I get the average dude or a gun, and I was like, how many rounds can you get off? How fast can you reload it? How accurate is it? The accuracy really doesn't bother me. I won't lie to you.
Okay.
The
So let's talk about time limits. How long? So we called it 6 shots. How long would you like it to take to reload?
I have no idea.
So 30 seconds in a gunfight's a long time.
Yeah, it's a long time.
Do you get rid of clips? Do you get rid of magazines? Because that cuts down reload time.
Well, I don't know
that's
that you
kinda hard.
can. I don't know that you can.
I mean, so really the way you would do that is
You
you'd
could
have
just
to
limit them, right?
Limit.
The amount of clip and the amount that they could hold. And I think we all just need to acknowledge that this is all dead in the water. Like, this doesn't get off the ground.
Oh yeah, no.
Like,
These birds' wings have been clipped and they've legs are
Like,
just broke.
I just want the entire audience to know that this is 100% a thought experiment.
This is what Wyatt would do if Wyatt was
If
dictator.
I was supreme ruler of the United States of me, this is what we would do. And it would be so beautiful. It would be so beautiful.
I don't know.
We should have another podcast about what I would do.
I still have the We Three Dictators.
Oh, yeah, you know what?
Yeah.
We'll do that next.
I think. What's y'all's opinion on a wait period?
Oh yeah, I pretty much endorse a waiting period.
I'm a firm 15-day wait period.
And the reason I endorse, I think a waiting period actually may be the most effective kind of gun law that we can back. Because what happens, like with Uvalde, is he bought these guns 2 days before he did the shooting, and that's what happens with these mentally unstable people. They reach a breaking point, whatever that
statistically, wait periods stop shootings.
Yeah, so that's what I think we all agree there.
Yeah.
And
the data backs that up.
Right, the reason is again these mentally unstable people, and most mass shooters are mentally unstable in one way, shape, or form, right? And they come in and they reach a breaking point. Someone was mean to them that day. They saw a post that pissed them off. I can't remember who. I think his grandma was going to take his cell phone. Was the Uvalde guys? Right. Whatever ridiculous thing that can never justify what they do breaks them. They go buy a gun and then they go the next day and commit the shooting. If they have to go buy a gun and then wait 2 weeks. Wait 3 weeks. Then even a mentally unstable person, that takes a lot of dedication. Yeah. I can't plan something 3 weeks in advance and stay dedicated to it.
And most of good luck keeping that quiet. Something's going to get out.
It takes 3 weeks to vet it. I mean, I would push it back. I mean, some people used to say that. So they used to have to catalog guns. So if you went to a gun store, you would have to order your gun, and they would order it out of a Sears catalog.
Mm-hmm.
Not Sears, but you know what I'm saying.
That'd be right. Sears
and
catalog.
it would take 3 months.
Yeah, because
3 months seems a little excessive, but I mean, hell,
I think 3 weeks is a good. I would say 3 weeks.
I would say a month. Month's a pretty good wait period.
I mean, yeah, but if you're not if you don't have a good reason to need a gun that day, I'm cool with it.
Right, and if you have a good reason to need a gun that day, you should have called the police, not went and bought a gun. That would be my statement. I think a 21-day waiting period. Now, the issue is if you're so. I think we've had this conversation before, but there are people who legitimately may need a gun suddenly that day. So I think the example I used when we were talking about it on the porch was domestic violence sufferers. So, a woman whose spouse or significant other has suddenly gotten violent, and she is now in fear for her life. And really, statistically, they don't suddenly get violent. It's a slow build up over time. But that's
right.
But you're being able to
But instead of there's an argument to be had that instead of getting that gun, she should contact the police,
right?
Who would then, in theory, take that man in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But a lot of people, you understand why mostly it's women don't want to call the police. So there's a common thing now with 911 that if a woman asks for pizza and she keeps telling you that she wants a certain pizza, it means she...
Just because it's a trend on TikTok doesn't mean it's real.
No, this is an actual 911 trend.
Either.
So basically, it'll ask you is there another person in the room? You're like, yeah, and you just tell them anything you would order pizza. Is he hitting you? Yes, that's about right. And then they're like, "Is he violent?"
I think we've all seen videos
it's a thing,
comparable to
it's
this.
like, you understand why they can't.
Basically, they say like if he's done this, answer with pepperoni or sausage,
Yeah.
or like they walk you through a way to disguise your because your abuser's in the house.
And you'll be like, the address. It's
like blink twice if you're under threat.
Right,
you know,
okay.
And like,
It's kind of smart.
yeah. So can you understand like why, like if someone is violent, and they hear, yeah, can you send the police that they might kill them before the police get there?
But this person has in theory gotten away from that other person to go buy a gun. Do you understand? They didn't come with.
I went to go buy groceries. We forgot milk or something. They go to the gun store instead.
Like, yeah, or they realize like, hey, he beat me last night.
Yeah, honestly, however you
really matter.
The point is that when they go to buy the gun to deal with this dangerous person, they are principally alone. They're not going to take their abuser to see them buy a gun.
Yeah, and they're usually,
you know what I'm saying? And maybe that happens.
They might be distressed. Like as a gun store, you should see a woman coming in. She's visibly distressed.
I don't even think that's just a gun store owner, by the way. I think anyone like you see a woman walk in with a black eye, it's your responsibility to ask questions. Just as a guy,
like she's just
like,
scared.
Are you okay?
She's shaking. She goes, "Hey, I need whatever is cheapest that can protect me." Like you can. There's cues,
that's a couple red flags.
There's cues you can see that like, hey, maybe this woman needs a gun now.
But again, so there is, and I think at least it has legs. You know that
there's probably
if you need a gun that day for a specific reason, you should be able to go to the cops. Now, the obvious exception that I just thought of right there to that is gang violence. So a gang member who just robbed some other rival gang of their drugs or whatever it is they're dealing. Now he's in threat for his life. He ain't got a gun. He can't call the cops. But I don't think these violent criminals are the people we are trying to protect.
No.
Does that make sense? Now, I would prefer none of them die. I would prefer we have no gangs. But we live in the real world.
Not fairyland.
Not Karl Marx's communist paradise. So...
Why'd you ever bring commies?
I don't know. They always...
Well, no, so you say...
Why do you dream of like Karl Marx?
God, Marx wasn't even a utopian socialist. Like, he didn't think that we would all be feel-good, happy, friendly people. Like, he lived in the real world. He knew that there was going to be...
The manifesto says, like,
and murder and all this other
Either way... I think we're all good for... Let's just say right now, a month waiting period.
I'll meet you at a month. Why? 3 months is too long.
That'd be cool.
Month is a good wait. Good. Because I do like the good old wait.
What are you going to do for private sales?
That's going to be a thing.
You can ban all private sales.
No. So the problem is like
I don't have a problem with banning private sales.
Well, I have
or at least
the problem. So the problem is
an agency. You have to let somebody know.
That is the middle ground. So the real answer is you either have to ban all private sales or you have to regulate private sales. And what you could do is instead of making anyone who's going to sell a firearm become a licensed firearm dealer, you can make transactions occur at a federally licensed firearm dealer. So if I was going to sell Nick a gun, I can't just be like, we
go to Schmo Joe's Gun Emporium, and he run a background check. He goes, all right, he's good.
But in theory, though, there's nothing that is ever going to stop me from going, here you go.
Yeah, and I think if you give somebody a gun and they go commit a crime with that gun, the person who gave them the gun's got to go to jail too. Obviously, not as much time.
But you're still somewhat.
You got it.
So we got to put some level of liability on them.
Some competency that's like, okay, can I get?
Yeah, because if you're giving,
so I'm not against that.
Right,
if I give now,
you give the crackhead cousin who's twitching all the time a gun because he needs to go do.
He's going to go shoot some bottles in the backyard,
and then he goes and robs someone at Walmart for crack money. You're kind of responsible for that because he couldn't get the gun without you giving him the gun.
Well, so I would restrict it to strictly using the firearm. Like, you have to pull the trigger. Like, if they shot somebody, then you are liable now as...
No. If they fucking robbed a convenience store...
Any crime committed with the gun.
Oh, I guess so. Technically, crimes committed with the gun are violent crimes.
Yeah.
So, okay. All right. I could entertain this idea.
Like...
So what level of liability are we talking? So if I give Nick a gun and he goes and murders...
Jail time.
How long?
Yeah, I'm not talking civil.
Are we talking?
I just want to be perfectly clear. I am not talking this dude pays a fine.
Right.
You are going. They will take your happy ass to jail.
So the understanding here, though, is the person who gave him the firearm is now an accomplice correct?
Yeah.
They would be essentially
no,
like
no,
accomplices.
no,
Same as the
accomplice.
getaway driver.
I mean,
enablers?
similar punishment, but no. I would say, but there is some term of liability. I mean, we might have to invent a new word for it. But I don't know that accomplice is the right word because you may not have known that they were given. So basically, what you're saying, whenever you give somebody a gun, is like you're vouching for that person.
Well, so even if
And there are penalties for vouching.
so even
for
if
that
you're
person.
even if you're a getaway
Well, there's
driver,
not though, but I get what you're saying. Like,
so a getaway.
so I vouch for Nick, and he's a dick.
Yeah.
Nothing happens to me.
So
Right.
So even a getaway driver who has no idea that the robberies, they just hire a guy like, hey, or an Uber like, hey, drop us off this bank. We have some transactions.
When they get out and put black masks on, you should probably know
There's
something's
some
up.
foot in black mask?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's like some competency has to go on this guy. Like they are
I guess
expecting.
They might just put on N95s, and then you have no idea. If they come out with a lot of money and running,
But
Well, at that point, I think they're putting a gun to your head.
I mean, I don't know. Probably I would stick with less jail time than the person
So,
who did the crime.
I think murder's a life sentence, right?
If I gave you the gun,
No, I'm
Okay.
saying if I shoot somebody and
Yeah,
I
yeah,
murder,
yeah,
it's a life sentence.
Right.
Okay, so that's 25 years.
I don't know,
So
probably 3.
okay,
it's like
and in theory, this would also be a federal crime, right? Because we're talking federal legislation. This would also make you a felon.
maybe. Like,
So putting some measure of responsibility on private gun owners when they sell their firearms.
So if someone commits a crime, we're like, where did you get that gun? Or if we go to the other guy and we're like, hey, why did you sell him that gun? Now, I think that there is some time. So like if I sold somebody a gun and then 20 years down the road,
So the statute of limitations.
yeah, I was about to say, then he commits a crime, then that's not really on you. Because
Yeah.
he may not be the same person he was then.
I mean, he could have
there-
just
there
gotten
could
through
be-
an ugly divorce and now,
Yeah, right.
you know.
I mean,
That's
so
what I'm saying. So
I
like,
guess my issue is like, why'd you sell him the gun? Man, I needed money. Like that happens a lot, especially when like the oil field goes under. Oil field people, they buy guns when
Yeah,
when it's
they
good,
do.
and then when times hit tough, they start selling guns for a really good price.
you know,
tag.
I'm cool with that, but at the same time, like I understand that times can be really, really
You can
tough.
just sell
At the
the
same
gun
time,
stores?
this is a very deadly fucking.
You could have sold that firearm
to a gun store.
to a gun store for a
Or
more
the
reason,
Fed.
or the Fed for a very reasonable price. You didn't have to sell it to them.
Yeah, if
would be
anything-
my argument
If
against
anything,
that.
anything, a gun
And
store probably give you
I
a
think
better
the
price.
fucking the court's gonna argue that too.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Yeah,
So I think
the
prosecutor-
only avenue to get to get your money for that gun was not this individual. Now you could argue, well, that individual was going to pay me $500 more than what the gun's worth. Well,
They're
I
gonna
mean,
pay me
still, you know, it's no. Again, I can go sell a gun to a firearms dealer today.
Yeah.
Like it.
Right.
I mean, because they don't have to do a background check. They just pop that license out and go, okay, cash money,
Yep.
out the door.
It's tax free too.
So, well, that's returning it to the Fed.
Hmm?
But that's returning it to the Fed, isn't it?
Start
Yeah.
making your own guns, selling them infinite.
Well, that's what the
numbers.
guy in Japan did. And so I think there needs to be no, like, you're never going to get rid of, like, quote-unquote gun crime. Because what the guy did, Japan has very strict gun laws. But this dude basically welded pipe to a firing mechanism in a block of wood.
He made a makeshift gun. They do it like after.
It was a
poachers do it.
potato cannon that shot a BB.
But you understand, like those
Like-
are very high risk. Those aren't fire. Those aren't even called firearms. Those are just makeshift boom cans that may go boom this way to the gun.
Yeah, that's
You
what
gotta
I was
shoot
gonna
it.
say. The people, and again, I don't know, I'm not a gun guy, but the people that I know that know guns, they said that dude is lucky he didn't kill himself when that thing.
Well, I think any inexperienced person who goes to make a firearm is probably taking their life into their own hands.
Yeah.
Like, it's just like, if I was to try to build a cannon,
Let's be honest.
like, it's probably...
Let's be honest. Me building a firearm is not the same as a seasoned gunsmith by building a firearm.
Right.
Right.
But I mean, yeah. So I think it's honestly it's a fantasy that you're going to get rid of all guns. Like,
Yeah.
Let's say hypothetically, the Fed bans guns tomorrow. It's not going to matter. Like we have more guns than we have people.
Yeah.
Like that's like
We have more ammunition than China has people.
yeah. I mean, it's kind of like when people say that they're going to deport 11 million. Actually, I think it's 15 million now, according to the census. 15 million immigrants.
And
Like,
growing.
You cannot, it's a
Logistical.
logistically impossible to
To do.
pick 15 million people up and push them somewhere else.
We
Or
just-
take what is it? 400 million guns.
Registered. Registered's the key word there.
Guns?
Registered guns. Think of all the ones that aren't.
I got no idea. But yeah, so yeah, it's impossible. We can't get rid of them all. We just have to figure out how we can contain the genie.
I don't think I've heard any totally unreasonable ideas. I do think what I want. The goal is to prevent, again, keep as many guns as possible in the hands of law-abiding citizens who are going to use them responsibly, while also stopping crazy people or violent people from using these weapons against other people.
So if you ban the AR, I mean, that might help. I mean, I think I've told...
I mean, exclusively the AR, no, it wouldn't. Because then people are just going to buy AKs. Like it's.
I mean, you could ban AKs as well. I mean...
So again, this is going to get to a point where we need to define what exactly needs to be banned. Is going to be the issue. So I could have a 30-06 that fires the same rate as a
but the recoil is
AR-15.
bigger.
Yeah, but Wyatt said if under Wyatt's thing where I can make any attachments, I could put recoil compensators on.
It's still big caliber. Like no matter what 30-06, it's going to kick and it's going to kick you up, and you're going to have to readjust your sight line. When you're shooting a 223, it's just a bing, 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 bing. Whereas 30-06 is boom.
Well, so by that logic, can I keep an AR-10?
I don't know what's the AR-10.
308?
It hurts.
It's a 308.
I don't own an AR-10 yet.
That's what you were asking.
I'll look it up real quick.
I'm pretty sure an AR-10 shoots a 308.
Like I said, don't get me lying to you. Oh.
Nick,
Yeah.
Well, I think this is going to be a good place for wrapping up anyway.
7.62 by 51. So AR round. It shoots an AR or AK round.
7.62 is AK.
Yeah, it shoots an AK round. Which
Soviet.
AK rounds, like they're bigger. Like the AK round's actually more deadly than the AR round. But so I think if we talked about that, I think I've told y'all like when Australia did their gun ban, an AK or an AR costs what, $1,500 roughly, I think.
Yeah, the price explodes.
So it goes from $1,500 to $32,000. You got $32,000 just to spend on an AR.
I mean, I don't.
Not counting ammo. Do you think criminals and the average
The
schmo
thing
Joe?
is, though, Australia didn't have the amount of guns that we do. Nobody's ever had this many guns. America didn't used to have this many guns.
Yeah.
Like we've never had more guns than people until like the last 2 or 3 years. We've always had slightly more people. Like even in the 80s, like
Well, we didn't have military surplus. After
very-
World War II, we had a bunch of military surplus that we didn't need. A lot of people took the old Springfield bolt action. They
Well, and I think sporting became a thing. So like firearms contests and stuff like
Teddy
that.
Roosevelt
But
really.
I think it was real.
sporting.
If I had to guess, the giant jump would have been that the Germans were a real threat, and then the communists were a real threat. The threat of invasion from communism was.
We didn't even have more. So like the guns per person ratio wasn't very high up until like the 90s. But probably started in the 80s, which is weird because
Reagan.
Well, here's the thing: we didn't. So we made it harder for some people to get guns. Like we introduced background checks and we banned certain types of guns. But all that made people do was fucking panic and purchase whatever gun they could get their hands on.
Yeah.
And so firearms.
Well, so I don't know if I commit a felony, are my guns grandfathered in? Do I get to keep those and just not buy any more?
No.
I didn't think so. I'm just asking. You know.
What?
So if I commit a felony, do I get to keep all the guns I owned prior to the felony?
No.
And, so I didn't think so. But the reason I was asking is like, so did it spike because a bunch of people were like, well, I'll keep all the guns before, so I'm going to buy all these in case I might commit a felony later on. You know what I'm saying?
I think we forget
like,
that
it doesn't
the
matter.
McCarthy trials really sparked fear into people. You couldn't trust your neighbor anymore.
Yeah, everyone was a communist. I said, the fear of communist invasion.
You saw your friend buy a bunch of guns one day, and you think, "The fuck's he?"
I mean, the same thing happened. Well, it wasn't the McCarthy trials, but a similar thing happened after 9/11. You know, people were afraid their neighbors were making bombs in their basements. Like it was.
Yeah. I don't know, man.
So overall, last opinions. Let's wrap this up because we've done a good minute.
Yeah. Garrett.
So I don't have a problem with the legislation that was passed. I don't have a problem with I do worry how these states are going to use red flag laws. That's been a worry since red flag law kind of became a thing.
Mm-hmm.
I worry they're going to be abused.
I'll just point that no one, I don't think any state has abused red flag laws that I know of. They might have. I have no. I'm not.
I mean, so it's not going to be states. States are going to write it, and then people are going to abuse it to get.
I haven't heard of any that have been abused. I don't.
I heard one out of Massachusetts when red flag laws were a.
Well, the big thing with red flag laws is going to the wrong house. Like that's how
taking their guns.
I can't remember the name. We talked about it on the Cops podcast. I can't remember it might be Daniel Shaver, I think is his name. Dude in Massachusetts, I think he had a red flag law or call on him, and they went to the wrong house. And it's the one where the dude is like on all fours, and
crawling,
he's, like crawling, and he shoots him whenever he's like trying to pull up his shirt or something.
Oh, I saw that.
Yeah, it's yeah.
It was some state out east that I had heard. It was like, and it was an ex-spouse that was just calling to get the
Just
other.
pissed off.
Yeah. So this stuff does happen, and I will probably acquiesce to it being a very minority of red flags reported, right? But I do worry that the vagueness written into these laws may be explicit for that purpose.
Yeah.
Think so?
Yeah, I think there are state governments out there, and not very many of them, but I think there are state governments out there that would be like, I want this to be used as often as possible to keep as many guns out of as many people's hands as possible. You know, I think California is going to write something like that. I'm sure they already got red flag laws. New York, and maybe I'm wrong, but given what
some
Newsom,
states are going to enforce it more than others,
right? So that's my only concern with the legislation. And with the Supreme Court ruling, I do agree. Like you have to have a reasonable cause or probable cause or whatever it is. I think that's just way too vague. And if you're going to write something down as law, you probably need to put some specifics in it. Just because a lot of the arguments that stem from legalese is because you left too much to be interpreted. Like, let's put it down. Let's say what you freaking mean, and we'll go from there. All right. So that's my thing. Like I said, I got no beef with the Supreme Court. I got no beef with the Congress for passing the legislation.
What?
Overall, like,
I thought the Supreme Court really was stupid.
Yeah.
I thought it was so stupid. I mean, this law, there were no problems. These dudes, they were just trying to be a bunch of weirdos. They were just like, I just want to carry a gun because I want to freaking carry a gun. And New York's like, we've had this law on the books for over 100 years.
well, so a lot of stupid laws are still on the books, though.
There are several states that have had the laws even longer than that. And this law I think it affects like 80 million people in the states that it's in. Like, it's very long precedented. And there were no problems. Most people get approved anyway. So it's like...
30% being left over is still a lot of people.
Completely fine with me.
What do you think of the legislation?
Because they're not even saying you can't own a gun. They're just saying that you can't carry the gun outside.
Can't carry a gun in town.
So you can have it for home defense. You just can't have it while you're out at a bar.
Do you like the legislation, the bill passed?
I guess my only problem is that I didn't think it went far enough. I mean, it's good, but I mean...
Well, they tried to do
you're at
assault rifle ban, and that just got dead in the water.
The problem we're going to run into is that I don't think the states are going to enforce the red flag laws. I mean, like, that, for sure, like, the entire South, no red flag law is going to be taken, period.
But there are states with red flag laws.
Oh, yeah, no, they have them on the books. They're not going to enforce it. Not to the level that they should.
Well, that comes from a dereliction of the executive branch of government. Like, I've for a while, I've said, like, if there's a law on the books, it is the responsibility of the executive branch to enforce it. So, like, when pot's illegal, you should be going to all these states saying, hey.
Yeah.
And that motivates Congress to maybe stop doing stupid crap. So
that's my thing. The problem with guns is that, like I said, the NRA funnels way too much money into a lot of these guys' books. Like, not just like their campaigns, like into their freaking pockets.
Well, so that's going to be any corporation is going to. They don't just fund their campaigns. They're buying houses in Malibu for these guys, and that's going to come down to.
I have a huge problem with that. I view the NRA as just this horrible, horrible thing. They don't care about gun rights, period. They care about gun sales, and I think that's horrible.
It's just a corporation.
I mean,
I will agree to disagree.
They happen to overlap a little bit Because if you can't own a gun, then they can't sell you a gun. So
That's how that works.
I would say that's a lot of overlap,
if,
sir.
if they
Pretty good.
if they could have the same amount of money and you not have your guns, they would take.
I mean, but this is the same. Like if oil tycoons could have the same amount of money but not sell you a drop of fucking oil, they'll take that. Like if I could have the same amount of money and not work a day in my life, I would. You know,
right, But I'm saying is that they don't actually care about your right to own a firearm. The second that impedes their money,
that's when they care.
Well, so that's going to be corporate incentive at bottom line.
Right.
Like the second something gets in the like Disney, the second that rainbow flag starts getting in the way of profits, it's out the window.
Oh yeah, that's why like I wasn't there for a long time.
Yeah,
you know.
So
but,
you think these corporations give a damn and they don't like that?
No, absolutely not. No.
You think Oreo cares about black people's rights? No, they care about your ability to buy cookies and sometimes milk because it just
they go together. I get you. Yeah. I mean, that's my thing. Is I don't like lobbying very much.
I'm not a fan of lobbying myself.
I'm kind of with White here. I think it's a 100-year-old law. It's worked fine.
Something's old doesn't mean that it's good.
It's worked since
you didn't even know it was a law.
I didn't. I also didn't know that it was illegal to do certain things to horses on Sundays, but that doesn't mean that...
Only Sundays.
But the law...
I know. Only Sundays.
But you saying that law is stupid now?
Well, no, I'm not saying it could have been stupid. I'm saying there's a lot of stupid laws on the books that are 100 years. The virtue of being on the books for 100 years doesn't give you anything. There's a lot of...
It actually does to a justice because they have, what's it
called?
Stare
decisis.
It's precedent. And, I mean, I grant you this court has decided that precedent doesn't matter, but... no, I mean, serious. Like, Thomas said that...
I mean, so bad law is bad law. I think
but I think just because you disagree with something doesn't mean it's unconstitutional.
I think it turns into a Chesterton's fence thing. And
again,
these are the people.
The law was working, and just because someone says,
but just because it's effective doesn't mean it's constitutional.
That's what Thomas said.
But that's true, though. Just because it's effective doesn't mean it's constitutional.
There's nothing in the Constitution. There's nothing in the Constitution that says states can't regulate. Who can, if you can care? It just says you're allowed to own a gun.
But states can regulate it. Like California regulates the hell out of states. No, Alito said that you. Well, you guys said that one of them said that states could still regulate guns. California's regulated the hell out of firearms. Nobody's brought a Supreme. Well, they may have, and I just don't recall.
They always lose.
Well, they might. And so the Supreme Court seems to have agreed with you. The problem was that this law was deliberately vague, or they felt it was deliberately vague to suit their purposes better.
I tell you what, it's kind of weird to me that they did it because they kind of undermined judges. They undermined the authority of judges because basically what they were saying is that the judges are doing this willy-nilly. And I think if you undermine it was actually, I think the case was actually held up twice in both the district court and the Circuit Court of Appeals. So
yeah, I was gonna say you're gonna have to get your dog.
Yeah, she's about to tear my door down. Y'all don't know how to wrap shit up.
But yeah, she's going nuts in there.
Okay, well this has been the Refined Peasants. Tell us what you think about all this stuff in the comments.
Yeah, do you think gun control? If you hear a dog, just know
it's his.
It's mine. She's still a little puppy. Not a little puppy. She's a big.
Goodbye, everybody.
She's a big dog. See ya.